and hopefully we'll have a meaningful dialogue. Here we go. Charles Hoskinson, are you watching what David Sinclair is exploring? How about Aubrey deGrwy and the SENS Foundation? So David is like the new Aubrey. So years ago, when I was reading about this stuff, Aubrey was the guy, and he wrote books back in like 2007, 2008. And his whole argument was that maintenance could find a way to restore something or slow something down to a point where you could live a lot longer. And he identified different categories of what happens as you age, the breakdown of each of those categories. And so he published the book, and there was a little controversy, and he challenged his critics, and very proper academic dialogue, and they kind of fought each other into a stalemate. And what he did is he made this claim that if he set up a foundation and he had like I don't know, $100 million or something like that, he'd have sufficient funding to be able to get to kind of a longevity escape velocity. And the idea there is that for every year you age, they extend your lifespan by a year. So, essence, barring accident, you actually never die. Um, Aubrey has at times been a controversial figure, but he kind of started a really nice conversation. And in the academic circles at the time he started it, it wasn't considered to be a super interesting. It was kind of like AI has AGI and math has things like the Millennium Problems. They're super hard. They exist. People are aware of them. But people don't actually work on them because it doesn't really do much for your career. Well, anti-aging was the same to biology for a lot of people. It wasn't something that was sexy or vogue to study. You could do it in very simple organisms, but when you actually move to complex organisms, people say, well, it's too big of a problem. You're not going to solve anything. David Sinclair, on the other hand, did make a career out of doing that. I believe he's at Harvard, and he's written a few books. Lifespan is the one that people know him for. And David has a big anti-aging lab, and he's been involved in most of the big innovations that have occurred, like the statement that resveratrol may have an impact on aging, and namely that if you take it, it actually slows it down. Although there's bioavailability problems in practice and other concerns there. But also, I think he was connected to the NAD studies, and he's got all these mice that he plays around with, and he tries to tinker with their internal clocks. And recently, he's created a podcast where he goes over many of the things he discussed in Lifespan, in addition to the things he's learned since. So he's a really interesting fellow, very well published, very credible, and there's certainly a lot of interesting things there. In general, the two biggest things you can do to expand your lifespan have nothing to do with emerging science. They're good old-fashioned diet and exercise, which is something I need to do. Usually when they talk about anti-aging, they say, in addition to the optimal, meaning there already is an assumption that you're eating the things you should eat and you're working out the way you should work out. And this is plus plus. So people have been exploring things like the use of rhabdomyosin and metformin. And metformin in particular looks very promising. And David does mention that, I believe, in his book. So real good guy to talk to.